welcome to this week's bedtime stories video. So this week I have another spooky story. It is called The Monkey's Paw, based on the original story by W. Jacobs, adapted by Lisa Harcrater. Mr. White led his old friend, Sergeant Major Morris, into the parlor. There, Mr. White's wife and their grown son, Herbert, sat before a crackling fire drinking tea. "It's so safe and warm here," said Morris. "I can almost forget that mysterious jungles of India lurk outside the door." "Has something happened to you, Morris?" asked Mr. White. Morris rubbed his hand across his chin. "My life has nearly been destroyed by a monkey's paw." Morris reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny, shriveled hand covered in fur. "This small monkey's paw has a spell on it," said Morris. "It grants 3 wishes to anyone who owns it." "It's magic," cried Mrs. White. "It's cursed," Morris said. "Whenever we make a wish, greed clouds our judgment." "I wouldn't let greed cloud my judgment," said Herbert. "I thought I was smarter than the monkey's paw," Morris said. "I was wrong, and if I had a 4th wish, I'd wish in all my heart I'd never seen this paw." Then Morris flung the monkey's paw into the fire. Herbert quickly grabbed a fire iron and fished the monkey's paw from the flames. "I can't watch you ruin your happy home." Morris rose to his feet. Mr. White walked Morris to the door. When Mr. White returned, he said, "Morris was right. I live in a fine house with a family I love. I have nothing to wish for." "But we owe $200 to the bank," said Mrs. White. "Think of handing $200 to the banker, Papa," said Herbert. Mr. White stared at the monkey's paw. Then he took a deep breath. "I wish for $200. The next morning, Herbert left for his job at the factory. He wondered how soon his father's wish would come true. That evening, a man from Herbert's factory came to the door. "There has been an accident," the man told Mr. and Mrs. White. "Herbert was caught in the machinery at the factory. We couldn't save him. We hope this will help ease your suffering a bit." He handed Mrs. White an envelope. Mrs. White's hands trembled as she looked inside. Oh no," she cried. The packet from Herbert's factory contained $200. "We have 2 more wishes," said Mrs. White. "We can wish him back. We can have our sweet Herbert back." "Do you really think that's wise?" said Mr. White. "Do you believe anything good can come from our wishes?" "Do you want your son back?" asked Mrs. White. "Of course I do," said Mr. White. He took out the paw and closed his eyes. "I wish my son Herbert would come back." Thunder cracked outside the window. Mrs. White heard footsteps outside and flung open the door. A tall figure stumbled towards her down the road. Lightning flashed. Mrs. White saw her son clearly, but Herbert was not as he had been that morning. Mrs. White screamed and slammed the door. "What have we done?" she asked. "We have only 1 wish left," said Mr. White. I wish my son was dead." Mrs. White looked out the window. "Our son is gone," she whispered, "and so are our wishes." Mr. White stared at the shriveled paw in his hand. "Along with our happy life." He staggered into the parlor and threw the monkey's paw into the fire. And this time, Herbert was not there to put it out. The end. So that was the story for this evening. I hope it wasn't too spooky for you. So thank you all so much for joining me, and have a great evening.